Hello, everybody. We're back again. This is episode 3 or volume 3. I go by volumes.
Yeah,
Why not?
volume 3.
This is volume 3 of the Joe and Connor Power Hour. Today, we're going to talk more about DC. I feel like we've talked about DC a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
But it just happens that way. Next week, we promise it's going to be a different subject, but we'll leave that for next week, all right?
Definitely.
Today, though, we watched Justice League War World, and there's a couple of big Comic-Con, San Diego Comic-Con announcements, so we were kind of inspired to talk about DC animated movies.
Definitely.
So, Joe, why don't you tell us a bit about the announcements that came out at Comic-Con this year?
So it was announced at Comic-Con this year, even though Comic-Con is not the normal Comic-Con that it is, there's not a lot of actors or anything because of the writers and actors strike right now, but the announcement came across that we'll be getting an animated Watchmen movie and an animated, not just Crisis on Infinite Earths, but a Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths is what they're calling it. So those are the two big things. So obviously for me, I think the biggest one is that we're getting Crisis in animated form. But I think Watchmen, as we did, if you guys don't remember, we did review Watchmen last week on our podcast when we talked about all the Zack Snyder stuff. And we both have agreed, well, Watchmen is up there as one of the better Zack Snyder movies. It is still not a great adaptation of that comic that is so beloved.
It adapts the comic pretty well. The problem is it's just a lot of choices from a director's standpoint that's fairly mediocre.
Yeah.
So I guess I want to, and we'll have time to talk about both movies, but I think I want to start out with Watchmen since that's what we talked about last week. And
I agree.
I think we're both more interested in what they do with Crisis because Crisis, they can make or break.
Yep.
Watchmen, I mean, they're making an adaptation of Watchmen. It is what it is.
Yep.
What are your hopes for Watchmen? Let's hear them.
I mean, I just would like a good animated Watchmen because I didn't watch the Watchmen TV show. I didn't care much for the Zack Snyder movie, even though it's a fair adaptation. A lot of the characters feel kind of bland, nothing really. I'm hoping they really do a good job with telling the individual stories. Like, how does Rorschach's story fit into everything? How is Silk Spider? How is Dr. Manhattan? How's all that really fitting in to this story? And are they doing a good job telling and make a good story for the comedian? Make it feel, don't use crappy music choices at his funeral. Get real with it. Show us about, this is bad. He raped this girl. That was bad. Like, let's cover that.
I want to see a hard R Watchmen movie.
Agreed. Hard R.
I want to see a 1-for-1 adaptation. I don't want to see it like Killing Joke. Last time they adapted a Alan Moore property was Killing Joke, and it was a big deal. But my problem with Killing Joke, their adaptation, was that they fucking, they had like Bruce fucking Barbara and just everything to like pad out the first 30 minutes before you actually got to Alan Moore's. I want to see this be kind of like the ultimate 1-for-1 adaptation.
I agree.
Like I think there's a lot to do with the Watchmen story. I'm a huge fan of Watchmen. It's one of my favorite graphic novels, so I want to see it just done well. And if you know anything about Watchmen, it's an adaptation of several Charleston characters.
Yeah.
And, Night Owl's Blue Beetle, Rorschach is the Question. And it's very interesting, and it's a well-done comic. And I really hope the movie can... I don't expect it to live up to the comic, but I just want a way to watch the comic. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, hopefully it's good enough where you can watch, where you can feel like... I think that's the thing with these animated movies. You want it to feel like if it's an adaptation, make it like Spider-Verse did it so right with, taking the idea of these stories and putting it into a movie. Make your movie feel like you're flipping through a comic book. Because that's the one thing that people haven't, except for Spider-Verse, they haven't really created that experience. Like, there's good DC and Marvel movies, but there's not that movie that feels... There's some movies that are close to feeling like a comic book, but there isn't, that full comic book experience except for maybe Spider-Verse.
Right.
So I think that this would be a great way to have that happen, is to have these adaptations, because some of them really do feel like you're reading the comics, but then some of them don't. So it's it'd be great with this to really feel like, oh, I picked up a Watchmen today. Okay, I'm going to watch this movie. This is just like the comic. That's awesome. That's what you want to have.
I would love it to be exactly like the comic. I think that would be really cool.
I agree.
Because the comic's amazing, and I think the art style is great by Dave Gibbons. I think the writing's great by Alan Moore. Just take what there is and make like a 2 to 2.5 hour movie. And I mean, keep selling it, man. Sell the movie every couple of years. Because I don't know if you know this about the Watchmen comic, but they have to put it out like every 5 years so Alan Moore doesn't get the rights back.
Right, yeah, I did know
Because the rights will revert to Alan Moore if it goes out of print. So Watchmen has been constantly in print since its debut. Which, you know, let's ignore creator rights and, you know. But I think if you're going to make this, make a definitive adaptation, keep it in print, keep it on DVD, keep it circulating, make the definitive adaptation. Just make a one-for-one adaptation. I don't think what Zack Snyder did is all that terrible. I think he has some really hokey moments in his Watchmen adaptation. But let's keep Watchmen as Watchmen. That's my thought.
I agree.
All right. Do you have any other thoughts on Watchmen, or should we move on to Crisis?
I think I'm pretty good with Watchmen because, like, I know the comic. I know a lot of people read Watchmen and they're like, you know, I love these characters and I think this story, it is one of the best graphic novels ever made. It is one of the best comic books ever made. But for me, the Watchmen characters, because of our live action adaptation not holding that much to what the comic is, I don't have that much, like, I just want a good Watchmen movie because I don't feel like we've been given a good Watchmen movie, and I want to see, as long as we see a good Watchmen movie, I'll be happy.
Right.
And this is coming from someone who just knows the comic. I don't know, like, all the backstory. I read the comic. I've seen the movie. I like the comic more than the movie. I haven't seen the live action show. I want to see a good Watchmen. That's all I
just think,
ask.
like, I don't want to see bullshit. I don't want to see extra.
Yeah. No exposition.
I don't want to see new shit. I just want to see what Alan Moore wrote and what Dave Gibbons drew. And I want to see that on the screen.
I agree.
So, Joe, tell me some thoughts about the Crisis announcement. Because I think that's kind of what more of a wild card than Watchmen.
Well, so with Crisis...
I think both are huge announcements. I think we're differing because I think I'm more excited for Watchmen. You're more excited for Crisis.
I agree.
I'm excited for both. I think we're both really excited for both. But I think you're slightly more Crisis. I'm slightly more Team Watchmen.
I agree. I'm more Crisis because the characters in Crisis are what I'm interested in. And then also, I love this comic because a lot of people, like, when you look at the big scale events, Crisis isn't like any of the other crossover films that have come before. Because even though you have, like, Marvel's got its, like, Infinity War, it's Endgame, it's whatever you got.
Right.
Crisis isn't that, like, it's a big event, but it's not a big event in the same sense as those is. Like, there is a villain, but it's not a one-shot, pound-for-pound beat-down on this one villain and then wipes out the universe. He wipes out the universe, but it's a complex masterpiece of interconnected stories, and it's basically, it's a cameo fest, but done right. So, like, for me, what I like about this is, okay, well, we've had a couple different variations. We have the Arrowverse version of Crisis, which I think is pretty faithful to how Crisis is supposed to be. There are a couple changes, like, obviously they have someone else's Spectre to fit the story so that that character can continue. And I still think it was a cool idea for them to utilize Green Arrow in a way of using Spectre. But with this, one of my biggest gripes with the DC animated movies, we talk about the DC animated Justice League, is I don't like how Green Arrow has been treated in the animated DC movies so far. He's supposed to be a supporting character and he's a member of the movies, but he's either killed off in some of them, or his fate is left in the balance, or he's there for a couple cameos. But Green Arrow is a better character than that. Green Arrow does not deserve the Hawkeye treatment. You don't just cast him aside. He should be with Batman. He should be hanging out, having a beer, having a smoke, doing whatever, and then kicking ass. Like, because there are comics where, and we're not even just talking about the CW version of Green Arrow, we're talking comics. There are comics where Green Arrow and Batman have took each other on in fisticuffs, and Green Arrow landed his shots in and could have easily taken out Batman. So I think that he deserves his due.
Right.
And a big event like Crisis, in the Arrowverse version, Oliver was the thing that saved the multiverse. So have Green Arrow in Crisis be the character that does things to help the multiverse, but don't kill him like you always do. Give him a purpose, make him a part of the team, make it center around, if it's Justice League Crisis on Earth, I want to see a Justice League in Crisis. Show me a Justice League that is truly in crisis of this event. And like obviously, yeah, we want to see different versions of characters and all that, but I want to see a well-rounded Justice League team dealing with a big threat like the Anti-Monitor. That's my biggest pitch, is to see these heroes respected in this quest. Like, how does Supergirl meet her fate? How does Flash make his ultimate sacrifice?
Right.
Those are the things that I would like to see. And then we can talk about like other things like who would we want to see from the DC mythos that we think could appear. Because I have a couple theories about what I think DC could do to make this event pretty cool.
I think it'll be different. I think we'll get a lot more modern characters.
I agree.
But that weren't in the 80s version because they simply weren't made back then.
Yep.
But I also think we'll... Like, I'm excited. I love seeing Flash's sacrifice. I love that Supergirl dies. Mm-hmm. I would love to see the idea of kind of the classic Action Comics #1 Superman getting pulled over.
Yep.
Because I like having two different Supermans. Because the modern Superman is a very overpowered character. If you look at Superman, the original, he's got a more interesting power set, I think, because he's a lot more grounded. He can jump real good, and he's a good puncher. He's bulletproof.
Yeah.
He's the George Reeves Superman. That's what I like about George Reeves' comics.
Right.
Or George Reeves' movies, I apologize. Or
whatever,
fucking George Reeves' show. I'm trying to get it right.
Whatever it is.
I like that George Reeves is more grounded, I think.
I agree.
He's
I think
not
that's good.
so overpowered. He's taking on the world, but he just wants to stick up for the little guy.
Yeah, I think too the idea of two Supermans are cool. I personally would like them to take an idea that they borrowed from the Arrowverse Crisis. I want to see Kingdom Come Superman, because I love Kingdom Come Superman. I think Kingdom Come Superman appearing would be awesome.
Get that jaded Superman in there, the jaded old.
And even have Brandon Routh voice him again, because Brandon Routh coming back for, I don't know if you saw the Arrowverse Crisis, but they did some pretty big cool things. Like they did some really, it's a pretty faithful adaptation, but I think animation you can do better. And I think they could do better. And I think seeing Kingdom Come would be awesome. Seeing him interact with another Superman would be great.
I'd love to see Raymond Cho.
Yeah.
I'd love, not Ryan Cho, but I'd love to see Ray Palmer.
Well, yeah, I'd love to see Ray and Ryan. If you have both of them interconnect, and then you see Ray start him as Adam, or maybe they're both Adam. Maybe in the Crisis you see both Adams, and they're just both kind of trying to do their thing.
I'd love to see Justice League and Justice Society team up.
Mm-hmm. That'd be good. I would like to see
because I love like Alan Scott, Jay Garrick. I love those classic versions of Green Lantern, Green Arrow before Gardner Fox.
In
the 60s reinvented them as Hal and Barry. I love those versions.
I would love to see other versions of our heroes, like just interacting with the other versions of them that they have not met or haven't seen. Like maybe if we have our Silver Age or our main Green Arrow meet like our old school Justice Society.
Beardless.
Yeah, beardless, and then you have the one with the beard. They're cracking jokes. Like one's more serious and just. I think that'd be cool. I
agree.
And I think they also have the opportunity here to do a couple things like, I don't know, because DC animated movies are happening now, but we know that James Gunn now, DC Studios, a bunch of stuff are happening. They have the opportunity to use, and they said animation was a part of their plan for the future, so they could use this to set up some characters for their movie universe. Because they said animated TV shows and movies and video games are all their DCU property. Like, it's their big project. So all this could connect if they wanted to. So, like, I would like to see something that would be kind of cool. And I don't know if they would do this because, obviously, they're already under a lot of heat with the Snyder fans. But imagine if they convinced Ben Affleck, Gal Gadot, everyone to come in and record for Crisis. Because Crisis is always known for having big cameos. And imagine the Anti-Monitor just comes in and just wipes out the Snyderverse right away. And in the new order, the new world of DC, when they build up at the end of Crisis and we build our new world, their world is not able to be saved. So the Snyderverse is just taken off the table in a really good, it's a messy way, but it would be cool to see them do it. So I think that would be cool. I guess the biggest question is, as both of us have knowledge of the Anti-Monitor, what do you want to see from a true adaptation, faithful version of the Anti-Monitor? Like, do you want an Anti-Monitor that kind of is like really evil and just completely is wiping out people left and right? Like, even in a point like where he's even over Thanos, like you're just like, this guy is scary.
Yes. I think Anti-Monitor, he's a universe killer.
Yep, he is.
I mean, he kills DC Universe like they're nothing.
Yep.
And, I mean, you know who else I want to see? I want to see Earth 3 because Earth 3, I want to see the modern interpretation of Earth 3. Owlman, Ultraman, Superwoman, Johnny Quick, etc.
I want to see the Earth from that they also used in the Arrowverse, which is the one where Germany won World War II.
Oh yeah,
where we have all of them.
Sure.
Like, I think that'd be sick, just to see evil versions of our characters and they're like serving the different side. Like, I think that'd be sick.
That would be sick.
I definitely want to see that. So I think other Earth versions, other Earths in general, Earth 3, whatever Earth you're seeing, I think different Earths would be cool. Different characters, like we talked about, the Atoms and different characters you see. I would like Blue Beetle to be in Crisis. I think seeing Blue Beetle would be pretty cool.
I want to see Ted Kord.
Ted Kord, yeah, that'd be cool. Imagine you had Ted Kord and the current Blue Beetle at the same time. That would be...
And Dan, bro.
Yeah.
They'll bring Dan into it. Because Dan was the original one. He found the Scarab originally, and then you got Ted Kord, and they both used the technology, but Jaime... was the one who was able to kind of harness the energy and become kind of that Iron Man type.
Yeah, I would like to see all three of them. I think all three would be cool for sure. I definitely would. I also want to see, because and the whole thing that sets up Crisis is you got to have Psycho Pirate. So I'd love to see Psycho Pirate have a really big role into setting up.
Oh yeah,
Crisis. I think that would be extremely cool. And then I would say. I want to see some surprise. Like we say, we don't want to see like changes, but some changes of casualties or something. I want them to do something with Crisis that like be faithful to the comic, but throw in some deaths that maybe characters weren't there in the when they wrote that comic. Because like you said, you have newer characters. Throw in some deaths that just kind of like it works because it's new, but right. Like wow, I can't believe they killed. I don't know, Harley Quinn and Joker, or
Harley Quinn didn't exist during the original Crisis.
So imagine something like that. Yeah,
she was from animated series.
So I'd like to see an Earth where Harley Quinn is a member of the Bat family, and then she gets killed off, because that's something they're doing in the Harley Quinn show right now that I think would be really cool to see.
That would be.
So just stuff like that I think would be cool. I want to see. I would love to see, because I think it's Earth. I don't remember if it's Earth 2 or if it's just because of Flashpoint, but I would love to see Bruce Wayne meet Thomas Wayne as his version of
Thomas Wayne is because of Flashpoint. That's
so Flashpoint. So just an altered version of that I think would be really cool to see Thomas Wayne
that would be
meet
sick.
Bruce. I think that would be cool. So I think Crisis, there's a lot of cool things. There's a lot of potential.
There's a lot of opportunity, especially given how DC's evolved since the original comic book. There's a lot of opportunity because of the original comic book, and they can take it in new and creative ways. I really hope it's either a two-parter or a longer DC animated movie.
I agree. I think it either needs to be like an hour long, or it needs to be a two-parter, because you can't have it at 90 minutes. There's too much that happens in Crisis that you can't cram it in. You can't mess it up. You can't slow things down. It's too big of a storyline, because the thing that we have to remember is like. Before, like, when they were doing the Flash movie and they're doing everything, there's, like, former, like, behind-the-scenes stuff that shows the original ending of the Flash movie before James Gunn and Peter Safran stepped in. They were doing Crisis in the DCEU.
Right.
Like, that was what they were building to next. So, like, if they screw it up animated-wise, then it's going to be harder to get Crisis off the ground for the new universe eventually. So,
right.
So I think that's why you want to do a storyline that does Crisis justice,
like,
so you have more source material.
How cool would it be if they did a Crisis in eventually in James Gunn's universe in 10 years down the line?
Oh, yeah.
Like, if they set it up well enough, it can be kind of this DC's Endgame. And what if, like, fucking Henry Cavill or somebody or Ben Affleck showed up and were like, I can help. You know what I'm saying?
And I think that's
Keaton,
probably what they do.
I mean, Keaton might be too old at that point, but you know what I'm saying.
No, I think they would bring back people like I've talked about that. Like a lot of people are like, oh, they're all upset that the Snyder people are back, but there's opportunities to bring them back for big event things. They're just not locking them into a contract. So I think, you could get Affleck and Cavill both back for something big like that. Like Affleck's kind of like, oh, I don't want to play Batman anymore. But I mean, 10, 20 years, he might say differently. By the time he's Michael Keaton's age, he might be like, yeah.
I don't think we've seen the last of the Snyder people.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think we'll see them again.
I think especially based on how DC is so multiverse heavy, I don't think we've seen the last of them.
I agree.
I don't think that's feasible.
That's why I like the idea of like even animated versions of them in Crisis. I think could be really cool because you get them in to do some voice work and then have other Batmans there. I think it's totally possible. And then in live action Crisis, totally seeing them again, like just it would work. So they could definitely do that.
Yeah,
I think it's definitely on the table.
So let's talk about DC animated history because it really started with Batman Mask of the Phantasm, which I don't want to talk about much because I'll be honest, the 4K is coming out, and we want to do an episode when that 4K comes out, kind of talking about Batman the Animated Series and talking about that movie specifically. But really when it started was Death of Superman. That's when they started doing the direct to video, and there's been several since. So I'm going to pull up the list of movies and we're going to just I'm just going to go through them and we'll talk about the ones we want to talk about.
I agree.
But in a way, I think it would be interesting to talk about, have you seen any of the Max Fleischer Superman cartoons from the 40s?
I don't think I've seen the ones from the 40s.
Oh, really?
I'm trying to think.
I love those.
Those were good.
You should watch them because it's more of that classic. It's a bird, it's a plane, it's Superman. This is before even George Reeves. So.
Oh wait, no, I do remember those. I do actually think I've seen those.
They're public domain. You can get them. I think I bought the set on Amazon for $10 for all of them. And there's about 20 short films.
Yeah, now that you mentioned, I do remember those actually. I do remember that those were on, and I was like, oh yeah, I think my dad threw them on a couple times. I was like, oh yeah, those are cool.
You should really, I mean this, you should actually buy them because they're good.
Yeah,
they're very good. Solid animation. They were all theatrically released, like alongside like other movies. They're great. Yeah. I love a lot of them. Like $1 Billion Limited is amazing, stuff like that. And then after that, we had kind of tie-ins to like Batman the Animated Series. And have you seen Batman Beyond: Return of the Joker?
Yes.
What are your thoughts?
I liked it. I mean, I was never a huge Batman Beyond fan. Like I understand that you have to pass the mantle to someone else. But
I'm the opposite. I love Batman Beyond.
Well, yeah, see, I warmed up to it eventually. I just didn't like the idea of it being futuristic and being different. And like at first, just kind of
jarring.
It was weird at first. But
it's a different take on Batman. What do you think of, so like Terry McGinnis? I would love to see Terry McGinnis in Crisis.
I think we will eventually. I think we'll see. I think there's plans for Terry McGinnis down the line. I mean, I would love to see Terry McGinnis as well because I've become much more of a fan of him as a character. It was hard to me as a kid to concept that there could be other Batman and other people. Like, you know, when you're a kid,
no,
you're like,
I get that. As a kid, you're like, it's Bruce.
Yeah. So now it's like as an adult, I'm a bit more open to like
Did you
watch
like Batman Beyond at all?
I did. I've seen all of it. I've seen all of it.
Because you're a little bit older than me.
Yeah, I've seen all of it. I've seen both. I went, and that was what was so hard because I loved. Because thankfully Conroy was still a part of Batman Beyond when they started out. But
yeah, because he played Old Man Bruce.
Yeah, but it was so hard to me to see a Batman that got old was like now not wearing the bat suit and was just kind of hiding in his cave, kind of instructing this new guy. But after I had gotten into it more and I watched more into it, I really liked it because it was different. There's new villains. They had some new concepts. They had some old faces. It worked. And so this movie was really good because, you know, the one character that's been missing to this whole thing is Return of the Joker. What's going to happen? Then they dive deep into the Tim Drake mythos, which was great.
I think Tim was a little undercooked in animated series season 4 when he was Robin.
Yeah, definitely. He was undercooked.
I love Tim Drake. He might be my favorite Robin.
Yeah, Tim Drake's pretty good.
I know people these days love Red Hood. They love Dick. They love Damian. I think Tim Drake's kind of slept on, especially if you read the Chuck Dixon run.
Oh, I think he's great.
And Chuck Dixon hates on the new DC plans for James Gunn, but I love, like, Chuck Dixon knew how to write a Spider-Man meets Robin. That's what it is.
Cool, yeah.
It's really good. I don't know how much of that run you've read. I've read most of it. It's awesome. So seeing him kind of be Joker's Spawn was kind of cool.
That is really cool.
But moving on, have you seen Batman vs. Dracula?
Yes. I'll say this.
That was during the
Batman, yeah.
The Batman versus... That was during, like, the 2005, 2004
Yeah,
run.
so that was after Batman Beyond, where you had the next Batman cartoon.
Yeah, this was out of the animated series.
And so this was the next animated series. It came from The Batman was what it was called. And so there's an animated show with Batman, and there's your classic villains, but they look different. So you got Joker with dreadlocks,
right.
and it's crazy, yeah. So I loved this animated show because it was different, and it was and I like the idea of how Batman is treated in this show, the different tones, the way he acts, and like his different villains, and the idea of Batman and Dracula is always something I've kind of been curious about, and so when this movie came out, I was
Dracula's public domain, so anybody can touch him.
So I was a very big fan of this because it was such an interesting matchup to see, and I remember watching it when it was on Toonami, and I was like, oh, this is so cool. The fact they did this, and I was like,
oh man, I think awesome. I watched it originally on Toonami too.
Yeah,
to be honest.
Yeah. So I remember.
I eventually bought the digital version.
Well, that was the thing. When I was a kid, everyone was all Iron Man, Spider-Man, everything. When I was a kid, anything with Batman's name on it, I was instantly watching or I was reading. So to me, I pride myself on being a Batman purist.
Here's another one, kind of a deep cut. Did you watch Trouble in Tokyo?
I did. Yes, I did see Teen Titans Trouble in Tokyo because for me personally, you talk about how much you love Batman Beyond. Besides the Batman animated stuff, Teen Titans was my favorite because for me, Dick Grayson is the best Robin. Well, I wouldn't say Robin because like Tim Drake's great because he's as Robin. I love Dick Grayson because him as Nightwing is, I just think, one of the best transitions from apprentice to hero that there is. And so I think that with Teen Titans, it was so cool because this is Robin showing his potential for leadership, and they even allude to Nightwing, and there's other cool things in there.
Slade, and that type of thing.
And how they use Slade in that is really cool because it's not your... For a while when they did that show, they weren't allowed to call him Deathstroke, so they had to work around it, and it was kind of cool. And the whole Red X thing being born in that show. And Trouble in Tokyo was awesome. I loved it.
And here's one I just gave you. What do you think of New Frontier?
I love New Frontier. So it was such a different story.
I liked your new video for New Frontier.
Yeah.
I didn't watch it because I wanted to talk to you about New Frontier on this podcast, and I wanted to have an original back and forth. What are your thoughts? Because that's an original Darwin Cook comic, and I'm a huge fan of Darwin Cook. What are your thoughts on the movie, though?
I think that the movie has to be one of the most faithful adaptations of that comic. Like, everything that I saw looks very accurate to it, and everything that they did... I loved the idea of how they used, like, the whole thing with the creatures, like, coming out of the bigger, like creature, and you had all these different heroes involved, and I love the idea of the American soldiers and the American people not wanting to team up, like, the government doesn't want to team up with these superheroes and these vigilantes, but so many cool characters, and so it's funny we mentioned this, because I've been playing Batman Arkham Knight lately. Yeah. I like to get into the challenge modes and just unleash on bad guys. I was wearing the suit with the purple gloves the other day.
First appearance.
Yeah, because he has a similar suit in that movie, and so I love that scene when he takes out the cult members with the purple gloves. Just how brutal he was, and the Hal Jordan story in that movie. I love the Hal Jordan story. I thought it was great. Right. And the Barry and Iris stuff is really good. I really like. Also, we talk about voice casting. Neil Patrick Harris as Barry Allen in that movie is brilliant.
Because Neil Patrick Harris did a lot of the early DC. Because he did Nightwing and Red Hood.
And he does great with both of them.
Jensen Ackles. I don't remember who played Batman in that.
Yeah, no, they do great. They're both fantastic. And I was shocked to see him as Barry Allen, but it was so fitting and it worked. So yeah, I really liked this animated movie. There was the different... They showed a darker side to Wonder Woman, which I didn't expect. Like how she comes into the real world and she wants to have all the other, like, she starts treating humanity different because of how women are being treated at the time, and it was super super good. I love that one.
Have you seen Green Lantern First Flight?
I have not watched that one yet. Is that one really good?
That's awesome. Because here's the thing. I have always been a huge Green Lantern fan.
Yeah.
And I saw First Flight before I saw the Green Lantern movie, and it just hyped me up so much. It came out,
and then you were disappointed,
in 2009. Yeah. And then I liked the Green Lantern movie when I first watched it. I'm less keen on it these days.
Right.
But, yeah, no, it's interesting.
Yeah, I would definitely have to watch that one.
How about Crisis on Two Earths when they fought the alternate Justice League?
Oh, yeah.
That's the one where they fight Owlman and Power Man and stuff.
Oh, I love that movie because I'm such a huge fan of Owlman. Like, I think, like, alternate evil Batman, other than, like, Thomas Wayne's alternate version, I just think Owlman versus Batman is one of the coolest matchups ever.
The idea that there's someone who's, like, what if Batman was evil? The ultimate strategist.
And so it's funny to me because people talk about
and
like
detective.
People always talk about that people always talk about the greatest threat in like every DC story is like, oh, Injustice, when Superman goes crazy and becomes evil, he's the worst thing. The thing we need to be concerned about is if Batman ever stops being the good guy, that's what we should be scared. Because even though Batman doesn't have the powers of Superman, he still is a legitimately terrifying genius.
You have Ultraman, who's Superman but evil.
Exactly.
And when you have that kind of blind idealism turned evil, you have blind evil. Blind evil, it isn't as smart.
Yeah, I love that movie. That one's one of my favorites. I love just the whole concept of Owlman. I would love to see Owlman in live action. I would love to see anything with they could make that happen one day. I think that would be so cool.
How cool would it be to see like a Jensen Ackles Batman fight an Owlman who's played by like Ben Affleck or George Clooney or one of the old Batman?
Yeah, it should be by someone who's no longer going to play Batman, but they could play an older, more evil version of Batman. I think that'd be cool.
Who's like, fuck you, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be sick.
You know what movie I want to talk about? Short. Spectre. Yes. I am a huge fan of Spectre. I know you are because you like when Oliver Queen becomes Spectre.
Just because I was not expecting that. Like, I knew they were going to try and find a way to preserve Oliver as a character, continue to use him, but I did not realize that they were going to do something that crazy.
Right. Well, Spectre's one of those characters from the Golden Age and Silver Age, especially, is where he's awesome, man. I would love to see I would love to see Blumhouse team up with, and there's a short movie for Spectre that has come out, but my point is I would love to see like Blumhouse team up with James Gunn and make just this crazy Spectre like $50 million movie where you got this guy who's like, these people are committing crimes, I'm gonna cast my fucking judgment.
I would love to see that because I love the idea of Spectre. Like, I love the animated film that you're mentioning. I think that Spectre is a very cool character, and I think anything with him is he's definitely a high priority character that I would love to see them do more with. And I like the idea of him teaming up with another studio to make something like that. I think would be really cool. So yeah, I'm 100% on Spectre. I think that would be cool.
I love Spectre. Spectre's awesome. Let's see. I'm just gonna go down. Batman Under the Red Hood. I know you've seen that one.
This one is my so besides Massacre of the Phantasm, which obviously we're going to talk about, but that one's obviously higher up there on the tier list of everything. But this movie for me I've watched all these animated movies and I loved it, but that was the movie that skyrocketed me to watch every single DC animated movie because I just love that story.
I loved that moment as a kid because I remember I watched this for the first time. It came out in like 2010, and so I watched it the first time when I was like 12. And me and my friend rented it from the Red Box, and Batman or Red Hood throws the duffel bag full of heads down, and he's like, I could literally kill all of you guys. You work for me now.
Yeah, it's one of the greatest parts.
That was awesome. Like, when I was a kid, that shit was, like, mind-blowing.
What's even cooler is in the, I think it was I forget if it's the second or third season.
It's a great adaptation.
In the third season of Titans on HBO Max, they do an homage to that, which is really cool. But yeah, so, I love Under the Red Hood. Voice cast, fantastic. Everyone from Joker to Black Mask to just Jensen Ackles as Red Hood is great, and one of my favorite scenes in that movie is the final confrontation between Batman, Joker, and Jason Todd is fantastic because you're seeing you see him, he's got the Red Hood mask off, you're seeing Robin, you're seeing Jason's face, and he has this great line where he's talking to Batman and he's like, I understood, that you didn't, go get revenge for me because, it's not what you do, and I've gotten over that. But why is this filth still alive? And he pulls Joker out and just, it's an awesome scene. That movie's just so good.
I do think we have to talk about kind of a low point in DC animated films.
Yeah.
Batman, The Killing Joke. Because, like we were talking about Watchmen and how they should make a direct adaptation, they tried to make a direct adaptation of Killing Joke. The catch being, to make it feature length, they added a bunch of bullshit at the start.
Yep, and I remember that they put Killing Joke in theaters, and I saw it and paid for it in theaters, and it was horrible. It was horrible. Oh, gosh. I can't believe it. I remember I loved that comic, and I couldn't believe how many weird things they put in that movie just to make it longer. Just, it was so bad.
I don't like the idea of Bruce fucking Barbara because it's like Barbara's like his kid.
Yep, I agree. It's just too. It just seems too much like something he would not do, and it just doesn't work.
Yeah. Did you watch either of those Batman movies where Batman or like the Return, like the '60s Batman extensions, like Batman Return of Two-Face?
Yep, I watched both of them. I thought both were great, especially because you got to see more Adam West content since he had passed.
The fact that we had the 1960s Batman like continue in the 2000, the 21st century, had basically 2 new movies.
Oh yeah,
for Batman, that was awesome.
It was fantastic, and William Shatner
as Two-Face.
Two-Face was awesome. That was so awesome. Cool. Yeah, no, I love those ones. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I love those as well. I think there's a lot to it. I mean, they're very much based on based on what we got, or based on those '60s shows. But I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's fun. I love the '60s show for what it is. I haven't seen a ton of the '60s show. I've watched a handful of episodes here and there, mostly in syndication.
Oh yeah, you just got to look at it.
But it's fun to see it as what it is. And I guess that kind of transitions me into Batman versus the Ninja Turtles.
Oh yeah.
Have you seen that one?
I have. I've seen this one, and I have both comics that it's based off, and I love this. This is 2 of my favorite things brought together in the best way. I mean, from the get-go of this movie, from the first time this movie starts, if you guys have seen this movie, we get the most iconic face-off of all time as someone who is a martial artist and someone who just loves both these characters. You think it's like, in the Ninja Turtle movies and in all the Ninja Turtles animated stuff, it's so cool watching. You're like, oh, Turtles versus Shredder is awesome because Shredder's their Joker. It's their ultimate villain. Well, here you get to see Shredder versus Batman, and it is awesome. And then also the flavor of this movie is like, there's scenes where eventually he's not up for it in the beginning of the movie, but later in the movie, you got Batman eating pizza and drinking soda with the turtles, and just like
he does,
that's awesome. He's just hanging out with these like Ninja Turtles. And
what do you think of the Elseworld stuff? Because they did like Superman Red Sun as a comic, and
I liked some of the Elseworlds. I liked Red Sun.
Gaslight.
Oh, I love Gotham.
Thoughts on that?
I love Gotham by Gaslight because there's a couple things in there that are some cool twists that I didn't expect them to do. Like they had the whole Jack the Ripper thing in there, and they I believe it was related to, it's Gordon and Riddler were the big thing in that one, which is pretty cool. And the whole kind of steampunk vibe in that one is really cool. Like I really like the idea of it as an Elseworld. It's really cool because it's a different era of Batman that you get to see that I just kind of, I don't know, I dug it. I dug it for what it was. And then Red Sun, like I definitely love it because Russian Superman just itself.
And they did the Batman Samurai too.
Oh, I love that one. That one's great. Oh yeah, you mean
I
Batman
haven't
Ninja?
seen
Yeah.
Batman Ninja yet.
Oh, Batman Ninja's cool.
Sick.
So the cool thing about
I
Batman
have the
Ninja,
steelbook of it, but I haven't gotten around.
the thing about Batman Ninjas that's awesome is that it's entirely Batman as an anime into like every detail. So like the art style, everything. You have an anime version of Nightwing, Joker, Harley Quinn in there, Batman. Like all the main characters are in there, and they're anime style, and it's so cool. And it is a ninja movie with Batman characters.
Right, that's awesome.
It works.
I love it. So I think we've covered a lot of DC animated. I think our conclusion on DC animated is it can be a really great tool to tell stories that necessarily wouldn't come to the big screen.
Yeah.
And kind of spread these comics to the masses. Like most of the stories are adapted from the comics. If they're not adapted from the comics, they're kind of original ideas that are really interesting.
Definitely.
My question is, I know we got Watchmen and Crisis, which top my fucking list for animated DC shit that I want to see done. Yeah. But are there any other storylines that come to mind that's like, I need to see this as a movie, and it really only makes sense as like an animated movie? What comes to mind?
I'm trying to think. Animated movie wise,
I can start if you need.
Yeah, help. that might help. Just because
I got a couple. Yeah. Blackest Night.
Yep.
I would love to see a full length Green Arrow movie.
That's something I was thinking
where he
about.
works with Speedy and stuff. Yeah. Spectre. I'm a big fan of Spectre, so if they wanted to make a full length version of Spectre, I'd love that. Blue Beetle, Ted Kord. I'd love to see Ted Kord kind of try to, his relationship with Booster Gold.
Yeah.
Him trying to maybe mentor Jaime, and maybe a little bit where like Dan passes the mantle to him. Green Lantern is now in 3 movies because he had Emerald Knights, First Flight, and Beware My Power.
Yep.
But I would love more Green Lantern because I'm a big fan of Green Lantern.
I agree.
I also think Flash deserves more love in the DC animated field.
I agree. I agree. I think you definitely.
Other characters, Martian Manhunter.
Yeah.
I'd love to see a movie. Because I feel like DC, the animated movies, are the sky's the limit. It focuses on the Trinity a lot, but other characters I'd love to see there.
Yeah, they're definitely
I'd love to see more Justice Society. Another Justice Society movie would be awesome. Maybe a Fleischer era / Jerry Siegel, Joe Shuster era Superman would be fun. I actually just pre-ordered while we were filming this podcast the first appearance Superman action figure from McFarlane.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm going to do an action figure review on it.
Yeah, I usually do action figure reviews on a lot of my big McFarlane ones. I'm excited to get another McFarlane. I just haven't seen anyone that I wanted lately, so I'm waiting to see the really good ones come out. But now that Comic-Con happened, they usually make a lot of the reveals for the ones that come out, so I got to see what new ones are out. I have my heart set out definitely on the Anti-Monitor because I know that one was happening. My last McFarlane was I got the Keaton Flash movie version, and then I got the Affleck one from the Flash, which were pretty cool. But yeah, so I would say for me, I want a Black Lightning animated movie because I think Black Lightning needs more.
That's a great choice.
Needs more exposure. I want a Wildcat animated movie, and I would want a Green Arrow movie. But I like your idea of having Green Arrow and Speedy. But I want a Green Arrow, Black Canary movie, and then have the whole, not only just the Arrow family, but have Connor Hawke in there too. I want to see more Connor Hawke.
Connor Hawke as Green Arrow. I agree.
Yeah, I think having both of them there would be very cool.
The two ones that are named after me, Connor Hawke and Connor Kent.
Yeah, I'm a huge, and Connor Kent is my favorite Superboy, so I'm excited. Yeah. I definitely would love to see more of him. I would love to see. I would also say I'd like to see more Teen Titans animated stories. I think that'd be really cool. Yeah, definitely would like to see Wildcat for sure. I would love to see, even though he's been more of a supporting character, I'd like to see, he's usually treated as a member of the Suicide Squad, but I would love a...
Deadshot?
Well, Deadshot, yeah, but I was going to say, I want more Bronze Tiger. I want to see more Bronze Tiger in his own element.
I agree.
Yeah, I just think Bronze Tiger is such a cool character, and he kind of gets ripped off as, like, Black Wolverine, but, like, they don't, like, really give him the credit that he deserves, and...
Right.
And also, since they did touch on him in the last, the Soul of the Dragon, do some more Richard Dragon stuff. Just give us a Richard Dragon saga of movies. Because something about Batman in, like, the Kung Fu era of things just works. So I could watch an entire trilogy of just Batman kicking the crap out of dudes and just alongside those. So, yeah, I would love more. And that's actually something, like, I'm working on right now. I'm going to release a video tonight about my dream Green Arrow movie. Because I think James Gunn's got plans for Green Arrow. I just don't think he's announced them yet. So I think that we're going to see bigger Green Arrow stories told than we saw with Hawkeye in the MCU. Like, I think they know the importance of Green Arrow, and he's going to become a very important member of the Justice League. So, yeah. So I think animated stuff,
he was the first bonus member of the Justice League, because the original Superman, Batman, Flash, Green Lantern...
And I remember, did you ever play the Justice League?
Martian Manhunter and Aquaman, and then the first one who joined in was him, and then it was Adam.
And what was cool is, do you remember... And that's pretty cool. And do you remember the Justice League...
Hawkman needs a movie.
Hawkman does need a movie. And do you remember the Justice League, and not animated, but the video game from the show? They had a video game for PS2, and you could play as all the Justice League members, and you'd fight. The game ends with you fighting Darkseid. And you could pick, it was kind of like Marvel Ultimate Alliance, where you could pick any members of the team you wanted to play as for whatever mission. I remember the best thing was you had all the iconic costumes. I always loved playing as Green Arrow, because something about Green Arrow and Batman, you could go up, team up, and take on Darkseid was awesome. So yeah, that was definitely, those are some great. There's some great potential.
I'm gonna order you a gift right now. And I'm gonna give it to you next week when we do the podcast.
Sounds cool.
I'm gonna order, but you gotta read it, and then we're gonna talk. And I'm gonna read my copy. Right?
Okay. Yeah.
And then we're gonna talk about some Green Arrow comics.
That sounds sick. Yeah, I have a huge collection. I'm always looking for more Green Arrow comics in my collection, because I've
been telling you about this. Showcase presents Green Arrow.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about some 50s Green Arrow. Probably not next week. We need a week off of DC to talk about
next week we're going to talk about Star Wars.
And it's a $500 volume. Or a 500 issue volume. Or
that's awesome.
500... What am I looking for? 500 page volume?
Yeah, I will definitely spend the most time reading that, because I am always about reading Green Arrow. I have, like,
I ordered it. Arrow. So awesome. I'm going to give it to you, because it was my first comic. It was my first comic ever, and I just ordered it for you.
That's sick.
It'll come eventually.
All right, cool.
But it's going to be, we're going to both read this, and then we're going to talk about it on the podcast.
Absolutely.
Okay?
That sounds fantastic.
It's 50s Green Arrow. I want to do an episode of Green Arrow, or of the podcast, where we just talk about 50s Green Arrow, because he got me into comics.
Yeah,
Green
that's
Arrow,
a great idea.
A lot of people started with Batman. A lot of people started with Spider-Man. And I did start with Spider-Man. I had some comics of Spider-Man beforehand. But Green Arrow is what made me fall in love with comics.
Which is crazy, because, like, so to me, I started because Batman was in the media a lot when I was a kid. But as soon as Justice League Animated and Justice League Unlimited happened, I immediately came up with the idea, like, I've always been, like, my heroes when I was a kid. I always loved Robin Hood, so the idea of archers and stuff was cool to me. But it was literally... right at the time, I was watching the Batman animated series, I was reading Batman, doing all these different things, but right as Justice League Unlimited came out, I instantly became, over the years, I've become more and more fan of Green Arrow than I am Batman. Like, just like, I like Batman a lot because he's a classic character, but I think if people like, who's your favorite DC character? Green Arrow is my favorite DC character, because I love Green Arrow.
No, I agree. I think I'm going to give you that volume, and then we're going to watch it. We're going to both read it. We'll do a book club episode of the podcast.
That'll be awesome.
We'll talk about Green Arrow. We'll talk a lot about Green Arrow. We'll talk about Arrow. We'll talk about Green Arrow. I think it'll be a great episode.
That's going to be fantastic, I'm excited.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff to talk about, man, with Green Arrow. I love Green Arrow. And you'll enjoy this. These are fun pulp stories. They're not really your deep comic stories. I recommend people picking up Showcase Presents Green Arrow. Come on, guys.
Yeah, definitely.
$15 for 500 pages. That's how many comic books.
You got to do it for sure.
Your average comic book is 24 pages, so you're talking about 20 comic books worth for $15. It's worth it. Pick it up.
That's a steal.
And read it. and we're doing a podcast on it in probably 2 or 3 episodes. We'll talk about
Definitely, yeah.
But obviously, this podcast isn't just DC based. We talk a lot about DC because I think both of us have a really deep love for the material in DC,
Absolutely.
and especially with James Gunn taking over, who we're both fans of. We got lots of ideas for this podcast.
Absolutely.
And I think this is kind of a very defining, like, I want this to be a very important feature of my channel. And I think Joe wants this to be an important feature of his, and we got a lot to talk about. Because we're both very opinionated, and we have a lot to say about the topics we talk about. But Joe, we're coming up on the end of the Power Hour, right? About 50 minutes. Let's talk a bit about, I mean, this has been about DC animated movies. What are your thoughts on DC animated movies? Like, in terms of how do you see them expanding, especially with James Gunn's universe, if you want to talk a bit about that.
I want to see, so my biggest goal is like if you notice, there are some Marvel animated movies, but nothing with Marvel until they started doing like animated shows like What If. Nothing with them ever was canon. It was all like, oh, these are little short stories, and they're all like, so to me, what I want to see is, we know that they're doing Creature Commandos as like an animated show. I want to see, especially if you get like, if you're getting actors like, we know Frank Grillo is going to play Senior Rick Flag. Like, so I would love to see, for me, characters that are animated, seeing them in live action. I think like if it leads to live action, that's the biggest thing that I think you want to see, is you got to see those characters transition into live action, because it's going to be so cool to have a universe where you're like, oh, you're watching this animated thing? Well, here's this character. That's why I think it's such a smart idea to have Jensen Ackles as that, because then you could get to see Jensen Ackles doing his you get to see Jensen Ackles doing that, right. And I think that is the main thing you want to see. You want to have Jensen Ackles. So I think seeing these characters, this is a great opportunity to use animation to, like, maybe there's some characters that you can't give them a movie. Well, now this is a way to introduce characters to this universe without having them have a live action movie right away. So you introduce them in animation form, and they show up, and then they can lead to something else, which I think is mind-blowingly great. And I think this is such a cool idea, and the fundamentals of it just works. Something about it just absolutely works, and I think they could absolutely blow it out of the water with this one. So those are my thoughts on where animation could lead. I think that would be absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, no, I'm in the same boat. I think I'd love to see more cross-pollination between kind of that animated and live action. But at the same time, I kind of do enjoy animated being its own thing, so I wouldn't mind if James Gunn left it alone. Right. But I would like to see, like imagine seeing, like, let's say Jensen gets cast as Batman. What if there was still, like, your Doom That Came to Gotham Batman shows starring Jensen Ackles, but, you know, more Elseworld stories. Like, instead of doing What If like Marvel does, you got these animated movies, or instead, you know, that type of thing.
Oh yeah, and I think there's still going to be Elseworlds. Like, I think that, like, we got the Batman, we got the Joker stuff. There's still going to be Elseworlds in DC. I know there was something about they're trying to do a Constantine 2 with Keanu Reeves. So they were working on that. So,
Elseworlds, right?
Yeah, so there's still Elseworlds. There's still ideas out there that are not going to be necessarily connected to the main timeline. And DC's great for Elseworlds because there's so many cool things that can be just some character stories that they can tell. So I think that would be great. Yeah, Elseworlds is awesome.
I mean, we're almost coming up on the hour here, Joe, and I think we're running a bit out of steam in terms of what to say about this. But
I agree.
Would you recommend our little fan base watch DC animated movies?
Absolutely. I think you guys need to watch DC animated movies, because if you guys have kind of felt like, oh, well, I don't really like the DC movies that have been out in theaters lately, but I want to understand these characters more, and I want to just kind of see what makes these characters interesting. Why do people like DC? Maybe you're feeling fatigued by Marvel, and you're like, why do so many people are so happy or confident in what's going on with DC? Well, watch these animated movies, and you'll get to see just exactly what people love about DC characters so much more than Marvel characters.
Okay, and one more question. Do you have a couple of the DC animated movies you'd recommend to the 5 people listening to this? Hopefully more.
It'll definitely be more than 5. I'm going to say, Batman Under the Red Hood, one of my personal favorites. I agree. Son of Batman, another one of my personal favorites, deals with the Court of Owls, introduces Damian Wayne in the movies, get to see Deathstroke fight Robin. It's great. Another one I would recommend would be Batman vs. Ninja Turtles. Those are my main ones. I definitely recommend those ones. Those are definitely some of my absolute favorites.
All right, mine are Crisis on Two Earths, Justice League. You got Justice League fighting the Earth 3 Justice League. So
yeah.
The Earth 3 Justice League. So you got like Power Man, Owlman, that type of thing. I remember watching that at my friend's house as a kid and loving it. Under the Red Hood as well. I really love the Long Halloween duology.
Yeah, those ones are good.
That was awesome.
I love those.
That was a good adaptation. I like Mask of the Phantasm, Return of the Joker. Those are in the animated movies, so I'm not really going to count those, but those are 2 good animated DC movies.
Definitely.
Yeah, those are the ones I can think of off the top of my head that I think are really awesome.
Yeah, I would also add Soul of the Dragon, because if you guys want to see like James Bond means martial arts, that's the movie for you. Like if you guys are kind of like, one of my biggest criticisms with Batman as a character has always been in the comics, they're always like, Batman knows 100 and something martial arts, but Batman's a tank. You just see him throw batarangs and just punch people. If you guys want to get into like how good of a martial artist is Batman, watch that movie, because that movie will give you that. And as an actual martial artist yourself, or as I am, you get that appreciation for the character that much more, which I think that's cool. So that's definitely that one's definitely an underrated pick on my list for sure.
I agree. Soul of the Dragon's awesome. I love the idea of like a Bruce Lee meets Batman.
It works.
So that was the Joe and Connor Power Hour Volume 3. We talked a lot about the DC animated movies. We went through some of the highlights of the animated movies. And overall, I recommend watching these DC animated movies. I think there's a lot. I think they're going to become more important to the DC universe in the future.
Agreed.
I think there's a lot of interesting stuff. And I think they're a good gateway, because you got the live action movies, and then you got the animated movies, and then you got the comic books, right? And I think it's a good middle ground between, I'm not really ready to read comic books, I don't know where to start, but if you watch this, it gives you a lot of good lore information and kind of gets you into the comic books. So I think if you love DC live action movies or Marvel live action movies, it's a good place to start, and then eventually learn to love the comic books. And I think that's kind of the point. So Joe,
Agreed.
Do you have any other thoughts before you leave?
No, I think I'm good.
All right. This was Connor Hobson with NTMA Productions, and we have
Yoda Joe 93.
And we will see you next week with something that we promise is not DC related.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But we know you guys love DC, so we'll be back with more DC content very soon.
Absolutely.
Have a good one, guys.